Before we start, I need a favor. Let me know in the comments what's been done right or wrong in these backwoods stories. This also helps me create better content for you all. And now we begin. The first time we saw him, I thought he was just doing his job. We'd barely gotten past the trailhead. Me, Krista, and a rented pack full of gear we didn't know how to use. It was supposed to be a trial run for a longer through hike later in the summer. Nothing fancy. Just 2 nights. No cell signal. No people. Except for him. The ranger stood at the base of a ridgeline maybe 100 yards off the trail, next to a tree that looked more dead than alive. His arms were folded. His uniform was crisp. His brimmed hat tilted slightly downward, shadowing his face. He didn't wave. Didn't move. Just stood there. "Guess he's making sure we're following the rules," I said, trying to brush it off. Krista raised an eyebrow. "This trail's practically empty. We haven't seen another car in an hour." We hiked on. But 10 minutes later, he was back. Further up the trail this time, standing just off to the right near a boulder we'd just passed. Same uniform. Same stance. Still watching us. And somehow, he was still facing us. I mean directly. His shoulders aligned perfectly with our path. Like wherever we turned, he rotated invisibly to stay locked on. It wasn't until the 3rd time that Krista stopped walking entirely. "Okay, no. He didn't pass us," she said. "That ridge we climbed? He wasn't on it. And there's no shortcut around." We called out, "Hey, Ranger!" He didn't move. She took a few steps off the trail toward him. "Maybe he needs help?" "No," I said. "No way. If anything, we need his help." The ranger remained still. Almost too still. Like a cardboard cutout jammed into the ground. His head was ever so slightly tilted now. Chin down. Just enough that we could barely see beneath the brim of his hat. But not his eyes. Never his eyes. "Okay," Krista muttered, turning back toward the trail. "That's weird." We kept going. Faster. The path started climbing, winding back into dense pines. For a while we didn't see him. We reached our intended campsite, a clearing beside a small creek with a half-collapsed fire ring, and finally started to relax. Until night fell. The moment the last trace of orange left the sky, we heard a branch snap. Not near. Far off. Like someone trying to sound close. Krista clicked her headlamp on and did a slow scan of the trees. "He's out there," she whispered. "I swear to God. I can feel it." "Feel what?" "That someone's looking at me." I wanted to joke. Call her paranoid, tell her it was the wind. But I felt it too. A pressure on the back of my neck. Like turning your back to an aquarium tank and knowing the shark inside is already moving. I stepped away from camp, just enough to get a wider view of the treeline. And I saw him. At the edge of our headlamp reach. 50 yards out, standing half obscured behind a pine. But facing us again. Only this time, he was tilted. Like his shoulders were at a weird angle. Head slanted, almost like he was leaning inside his own spine to keep looking directly at us. "Why won't he move?" Krista asked. I didn't answer. I had a worse question. Why doesn't he ever blink? We pretended to sleep that night. Didn't build a fire. Just huddled in the tent, lights off, barely daring to breathe. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps. Then nothing. Then a soft inhale? But it came from above the tent. I didn't check. I couldn't. The next morning, everything looked normal. Sunlight on canvas, birds chirping, no sign of movement outside. We emerged slowly. No ranger. I checked for boot prints, none. Not a single mark except our own. Krista didn't talk much while we packed up. Neither did I. We just wanted to hike out. We were halfway down the return trail when Krista stopped dead in her track. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was the absence of sound. The birds had stopped. Even the wind. I turned to look back at the bend we'd just crossed. And he was there. Closer than ever. Still facing us. Still unmoving. But something was wrong now. His arms weren't folded. They were down at his sides, and his fingers were too long. I didn't tell Krista about the fingers. Not right away. We just stood there, frozen, staring down the path where the ranger stood. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't acknowledge us in any human way. But something had shifted, not just in him, but in the air around him. The woods felt flatter, dimmer, like sound was waiting for permission to return. "Do you see his face?" Krista whispered, not blinking. I nodded, even though I couldn't see it clearly. His hat was still pulled low, casting that unnatural shadow over his features. But what I could see didn't look like skin. Too pale, too tight, like something stretched over a frame. "I think we should turn back," I said, quietly. "We are going back. No, I mean not the trail. Just off it. Cut across." Krista blinked at me. "You want to get lost on purpose?" I shook my head. "I just want to not be seen for a while." We veered left into the trees, pushing through brush and weaving around thick root. It wasn't smart. The undergrowth was dense, and the sun was starting to drop again. But we needed a barrier. Even the illusion of one. After 20 minutes of climbing and stumbling, we found a shallow dip in the earth, a kind of bowl-shaped hollow between two hills. It was damp, quiet, shielded by tall pines. Krista dropped her pack without a word and sat on a moss-covered log, arms around her knees. "I don't think he's a ranger," she finally said. "No. Then what is he?" "I don't think we want to know." We rested there for a while, not speaking, just breathing. My nerves finally began to settle. I even started to believe we might have left him behind. And then Krista grabbed my wrist hard. "Don't turn your head," she said. "Just shift your eyes." I did. Up the slope, across the bowl's edge, behind a line of rocks. He was there. But something was different this time. His hat was gone. Not in his hand. Not on the ground. Just gone. And his hair, if you could call it that, looked like wire. Thin strands hanging too straight, like fishing lines soaked in ink. His collar was buttoned higher than before, and the sleeves were now cuffed with something metallic around the wrist. "I swear his uniform changed," Krista breathed. "I know. It wasn't like that this morning. I remember patches." "There were patches," I agreed. "One on the chest, one on the shoulder." "Do you see them now?" I didn't. All that was left was the impression of where they used to be, like they'd been peeled off and the fabric smoothed over. He was closer again. Maybe 40 feet now. Still not blinking. Still angled perfectly toward us. "I don't want to sleep out here again," Krista said. "You won't," I told her. "We move at dusk. Stick to the ridge. Use the slope to shield us. We stay out of the open." We waited for the shadows to lengthen, then grabbed our gear and moved fast. Quiet. No lights. Just muscle memory and the pale gray of the trail that wasn't a trail anymore. We didn't speak. We didn't stop. But every few turns, every subtle bend in the landscape, he was there. The uniform changed again. Now it was darker. Not forest green. Not brown. But black. With seams that didn't match. And buttons shaped like eyes. The sun finally dropped behind the trees, and the forest turned navy blue. That's when we saw a structure up ahead. A fire tower. Old, skeletal, maybe 15 feet tall. Built on rotting timbers, surrounded by dead leaves. We scrambled toward it like it was salvation. Shelter. Anything. There was a door at the base, open slightly. We slipped inside and closed it behind us. No lock. No latch. Just wood. But we felt safer. Until we looked up the ladder to the tower room above, and saw footprints in the dust on every rung. Still fresh. Still soft. Not from boot. Bare feet. And just as we registered that, Krista backed away from the ladder, bumped the wall and froze. She pointed at the far corner. There, hanging from a nail, was a ranger hat, and under it, pinned neatly to the wall with 2 nails through the chest, was the uniform we saw him wearing the first time. The uniform on the wall wasn't just similar. It was exact. Same stitching. Same shoulder patch, Lost Pines National Forest. Same gold nameplate. And above it, on the breast pocket, a strip of duct tape with smeared writing, "Do not remove." Krista took one step closer and stopped. "It's not dusty." She was right. Everything else in the tower, rafters, windowsills, even the nails holding the uniform, was covered in a thick coat of untouched gray dust. But the fabric? Fresh, clean. Like someone had just placed it there. Or someone came back for it often. "I want to leave," she said. Now. We didn't waste time climbing to the top. Whatever had made those barefoot tracks, and left that uniform, wasn't going to wait for an invitation. We took off down the slope, this time following the grade of the land rather than any path. The night deepened around us. The air smelled like wet bark and old pine. My calves were burning. My feet slipped more than once. But the worst part? We kept passing things we shouldn't have. Twice we saw the same collapsed log, same claw marks across the bark. Then we passed the gate. That same old steel bar trail gate that had marked the entrance to the trailhead. But from the wrong side. "It's looping," I said, my voice barely audible. "The forest. It's pulling us back." Krista grabbed my shoulder. "Wait. Look." A wooden stand sat beside the gate. The kind used for brochures and ranger warnings. Mostly empty, the plastic box faded and brittle. She reached inside. There was one brochure left. I shined my headlamp down as she unfolded it. At first glance, it was nothing. Just a map of Lost Pines Forest, some park rules, a few regulations. But when she flipped it over, the back page stopped us both cold. Photos. Old black and white staff portraits labeled Ranger Team 1966. There were 6 people in the photo. And at the center, taller than the rest, standing ramrod straight, with a slight tilt to his head, was the ranger. Our ranger. The same cheekbones. Same ears. Same unsmiling mouth. Only younger. Or maybe just unchanged. Below the photo was a short line of text. Memorial photo, Team Lost in Wildfire, July 2, 1966. Krista looked up at me slowly. "He's dead." I shook my head. "No. He's something that used to be him. Or something wearing him like a uniform." The woods around us groaned, like something ancient shifting in its sleep. We turned to keep moving, but the light caught something on the dirt, just off the trail. Tracks. Not boots. Bare feet again. Only these weren't human-sized. Each toe was too long, too pointed. The arch too deep. Like a skeletal print pressed through soggy clay. The tracks led toward a cluster of trees up ahead, thin ones, packed tightly. Trees that bent just slightly toward one another like they were listening. "I don't care where we end up," Krista said, voice cracking. "I'm not following those." We veered left again, pushing blindly through a pathless section of woods, tripping through brush and root. Finally, we hit a rise. And just beyond it, our car. The parking lot. The same cracked pavement. The same trailhead kiosk. Our dusty Subaru still waiting, exactly where we left it. Krista bolted down the hill. I followed. We got in, slammed the doors, turned the key. It started. The relief hit so hard I almost cried. I floored the gas, skidding gravel, tearing out of that lot like we were outrunning the forest itself. We didn't talk until we were 10 miles down the highway. Then Krista asked, "Do you think we'll see him again?" I wanted to say no. But I remembered the uniform, the brochure, the hat, and I remembered how many times he'd stood facing us, watching from impossible places. "I think," I said slowly, "we never stop seeing him." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I looked in the rearview mirror. And just for a second, in the back seat, in the middle of the reflection, there was his hat, tilting slightly forward, still watching. Now for our second story. We were still 15 minutes from the ranger station when we saw him. Tyler was driving, Lonnie had the map, and I was in the back seat stretching my legs after 4 hours of cramped road time. We were joking about how sketchy the campsite reviews were, peaceful but weird energy, one of them had said, when Lonnie sat up straighter and said, "Hey, is that him?" I leaned over the middle console and looked out the windshield. A man stood at the treeline ahead, just where the forest met the gravel pull-off to the West Rim trailhead. He was dressed in a ranger's uniform, arms behind his back, standing at perfect attention. He didn't move when we passed. He just watched. "You think he lives out here?" Tyler asked, one hand still on the wheel but his tone more curious than concerned. "No station in sight," I said. "Maybe he hikes in." Lonnie squinted at the map. "The actual ranger check-in point isn't for another 6 miles. That's not staff space." We slowed a bit just to see if he'd wave, or nod, or do anything at all. He didn't. Just eyes under the brim of a ranger hat, watching us the way statues sometimes do in dreams. Tyler kept driving. We figured maybe he was one of those old rangers who patrolled the outer loops of the park. Guys who preferred solitude, lived off-grid. Maybe he had a shack out there. Nothing too weird. Until we reached the actual ranger station. Clean, freshly painted, with a wooden porch and a welcome sign carved in big block letters. A single ranger sat out front on the steps with a clipboard in his lap. Same hat. Same face. Same man. "Is that," Tyler began. "No way," I cut in. "No time. There's no road behind us, and no time for him to get ahead on foot." We parked. Lonnie stayed in the car. Tyler and I walked up to the porch. The ranger smiled, barely. "Reservation for 3, he said before we spoke. Tyler paused. "Yeah. That's right." The ranger nodded. "Site 12. Outer loop. Fire ring and tent pads should be clear. Last group left yesterday." I glanced at the clipboard in his hands. No names. Just 3 open boxes. One of them already had a small black checkmark inside it. I tried to peer closer. He turned the clipboard just slightly. Subtle, almost too subtle, but I caught it. He didn't want me to see what was written there. "Do we need a parking tag?" I asked, testing him. He looked up like he hadn't heard the question. "Then, you're fine. Just stay on the trail." We thanked him and headed back to the car. Lonnie rolled down her window as we approached. "What did he say?" "He knew who we were before we opened our mouths," Tyler said. "Yeah," I added. "And I'm telling you, it was the same guy from the road." Lonnie looked back toward the porch. I didn't see him move. We turned around. The ranger was no longer sitting on the steps. The door behind him was still shut. We heard no footsteps. We left fast. The outer loop was a 2-mile hike from the ranger station, and we didn't see another person the whole time. Just trail markers, tall trees, and birds that kept stopping mid-chirp when we passed. When we got to Site 12, it was pristine. Almost too pristine. Tent pads perfectly swept. Fire ring cold but cleaned. Wood stacked nearby even though the forecast hadn't called for wind or rain. Tyler dropped his pack and started pulling out gear. "At least it's not haunted," he joked. I didn't laugh. Neither did Lonnie. We set up camp fast. Made dinner. Ate in near silence. Something about that ranger, both versions of him, had cracked the vibe wide open. When it started getting dark, we built a small fire. Enough to chase the chill, not enough to feel safe. Then we heard the cough. A single dry cough from up the trail. We all froze. It came again. Short. Close. Just beyond the trees. Tyler stood up and grabbed the flashlight. "It's probably just him. Maybe he's checking in." But when he flashed the beam toward the trail, there was no one. No crunching footstep. No flashlight returning the signal. Just 3 lines of boot prints in the dirt that hadn't been there before, coming into our camp. But not going back out. It rained sometime after midnight. Not a storm. Just that slow, steady kind of rain that seeps through canvas and memory alike. The kind that makes everything softer, quieter, and more wrong. When I unzipped the tent that morning, I expected to see our footprints from the day before washed away. But they were still there. The trail into our site looked like a preserved crime scene, muddy, marked map. You could see exactly where we came in, where Tyler walked toward the creek, where Lonnie knelt by the logs to check for dry firewood. And beside them? New prints. Boots. Big ones. The same tread pattern I'd seen at the ranger station and again, briefly, up the trail when he vanished into thin air. But these were different in one key way. They had no depth, no weight, just stamped into the surface of the mud like pressed clay. Tyler came out next, saw them, and froze. No way those are ours. No, I said. They're not. He followed them with his eyes. They started near the fire pit, exactly where we'd heard that cough last night, and ended just beside Lonnie's tent. 2 perfect prints, side by side. She emerged a minute later, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and stopped mid-step when she saw us staring at the ground. What? Tyler didn't answer. He just pointed. Lonnie's face drained of color. That's where I heard the zipper move. I blinked. You didn't say anything. I thought it was one of you. We checked her tent. No slashes. No damage. But her bag was slightly unzipped, and inside, a small, folded slip of paper rested on top of her sleeping bag. She hadn't packed any paper. It was creased, watermarked, and smelled faintly of burnt pine. There were only 2 words written in blocky, uppercase letters. Stay awake. That was when I remembered the clipboard. The 3 boxes. 1 checked. Now, in the middle of our camp, only 1 set of those boot prints had entered. No exit path. No return prints. Just arrival. We decided to leave early. Packed fast. Ate nothing. We figured if we hiked hard enough, we'd be back at the car before noon. The forest had other plans. Less than half a mile out, the trail changed. It looked the same routes, same turns, same trees, but something was off. We reached a wooden post marked 1.2 miles to trailhead that we'd already passed in the other direction yesterday. How is that possible? Lonnie asked. We've only been walking 15 minutes. We kept going. 15 minutes later, we passed it again. Same notch in the wood. Same moss pattern on the base. This wasn't déjà vu. It was a loop. We need to go off trail, I said. Tyler hesitated. That's how people get lost. We're already lost. We turned left at the next clearing and hiked straight for 30 minutes. No curves, no switchbacks. Just a slow push through underbrush and trees that got tighter the deeper we went. And then we found it. A clearing. In the middle, a fire ring. Stacked wood. 3 sitting logs. And the same footprint impressions we'd seen at our campsite. We hadn't escaped. We'd walked right back. Tyler spun in a circle, breath hitching. This doesn't make sense. That's when Lonnie shouted. She was pointing to the tree-line, her hand trembling. There he is. The ranger stood at the edge of the trees, 20 feet away. Not watching. Not moving. Just there. His boots were caked in mud but left no trail behind him. The hem of his pants was wet. His shirt was buttoned all the way to the throat, too tight, like the fabric wasn't made to stretch. And his face? His face was smiling. But it wasn't the kind of smile you give strangers. It was the smile you get when someone recognizes you, and you don't recognize them back. He took 1 step forward. Just 1. No sound. No splash. And where his boot touched the mud, the water moved away from him like it was afraid to soak in. We ran. Again. But I swear. I heard a second cough. Not behind us. Beside us. We didn't stop running until our lungs gave out. Even then, we didn't speak. We just crouched behind a fallen tree, mud smeared across our clothes, trying to breathe without sound. Every broken twig felt like a scream. Every breath felt like bait. I could still feel him behind my eyes, like he'd gotten inside somehow. Like the longer we stayed in the forest, the less it mattered where our bodies were. He already had our outlines. He just needed to finish drawing us in. Tyler finally whispered, "We need a signal. Or a sound. Something to anchor us. Something real." He pulled the emergency radio from his bag. One of those crank-powered ones with weather alerts and ranger broadcasts. We brought it more for the sense of security than any real purpose. I hadn't expected it to matter. Lonnie cranked the handle 3 or 4 times. The static came first, soft, aimless. Then a sharp click. A voice crackled in. Low, crisp, familiar. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. It looped. Every 3 seconds. Same tone. Same voice. It was his voice. We stared at the radio like it had grown teeth. Lonnie slowly turned the dial. Nothing changed. No stations. No shift. Just that same phrase. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. It's not a weather station, Tyler whispered. That's a recording. That's him. I think it's meant for us, Lonnie said. Like it's a command. That made my stomach drop. A command. From something that wasn't human. Or maybe something that used to be. I reached out and clicked the radio off. The second the voice stopped, the forest went silent. Not just quiet, dead. No birds. No rustling. Not even our own breathing. Like the trees were holding their breath with us. Then a new sound. From farther up the hill. A fire crackling. We hadn't started one. We hadn't even seen a fire since Site 12. But the sound was unmistakable. Popping wood, shifting ash, low flames licking wet logs. And the smell. Smoke. Sweet, like cedar and something else. Lonnie's voice was thin. He's lighting fires now. No, I said, he's telling us to. Watch the fire, Tyler muttered. Why? What's in it? We climbed the ridge, staying low. The smell grew stronger. The crackle louder. Then we saw it. A new campsite. Identical to ours. 3 tents. Same brands. Same colors. Same layout. A fire pit in the middle, burning bright. And beside it, the radio. Our radio. The exact one. Same duct tape on the side. Same scuff mark on the volume knob. Only we had ours still in my bag. I checked. It was there. Still off. Still warm from my hand. But its twin sat in the middle of that camp, crackling out the same phrase, loud and steady. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. Watch the fire. The ranger wasn't in sight. Not yet. But I felt him close. I turned to Tyler. It's a loop. Like a stage set. We're being put back into place. Lonnie pointed to the trees. He's not watching us from outside. He's watching us from here. From inside. The fire hissed. And then the tents shifted. Like something inside them was breathing. Not wind. Not settling gear. Breathing. Slow. Shallow. Syncopated. Lonnie stepped back. That's us. What? She grabbed my arm. We're watching ourselves. From before. Or from after. I don't know which, but that's us in there. Tyler turned to run. He stopped cold. The ranger was standing behind him. Closer than ever. Hat gone. Face fully visible. And wrong. So wrong. Not in any grotesque way. Just off. Too symmetrical. Eyes that didn't track light. A mouth that smiled before it moved. He lifted the radio from his belt and held it up. Watch the fire, he said. But this time it didn't come from the speaker. It came from his mouth. His jaw didn't open all the way. His teeth didn't move. The sound just came out. Lonnie screamed. I grabbed the real radio from my bag and smashed it against the ground. The copy across the fire blinked out. So did the tent. So did the fire. So did he. All gone. No sound. No smell. Just ash on the wind and wet leaves underfoot. And 3 of us left behind, holding our breath, listening to a forest that had already memorized our names. And now for our third story. I'd hiked alone before. That's not bravado, it's just a truth. I preferred it. You walk in silence long enough, and the woods start to breathe for you. Patterns emerge. No distractions. Just time, weather, and instinct. But this trail was different. I chose it on impulse. It wasn't on any of my apps. No reviews. No warnings. Just a line on an old printed map I found folded behind the seat of a rental car I was borrowing for the weekend. Service Route B, fire line access only. I expected overgrowth, maybe a downed tree or 2. But it was clean. Too clean. No litter. No boot prints. No birds overhead. Like it had been swept. I walked an hour before I noticed the feeling. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Watching. Every time I stopped, it stopped. When I walked, it followed. Not in sound, in pressure. Like someone tugging softly on the edge of your thoughts. It was late afternoon when I saw him for the first time. Only, I didn't really see him. He was never fully in frame. Just at the corner of my vision. Left side first. Then the right an hour later. Always the same posture. Upright. Hands behind his back. Hat low. Forest ranger green. But when I turned to face him, he was gone. Each time. Every time. Just out of reach, like a dream that evaporates when you try to write it down. Still, I told myself it was normal. My mind playing games. I hadn't eaten much. I hadn't slept well. Probably just shadows. I pressed on. But that night, I woke to the sound of leaves shifting outside my tent. Not close. Far enough to keep me guessing. I held still. Listened. Then whispers. Just under the wind. Not words. Not syllables. The shape of language. Like someone was mimicking speech without meaning it. I stayed frozen until dawn. When I finally unzipped the tent, everything looked normal. Except my compass. It was spinning slowly. Clockwise. I wasn't near magnetic rock. My compass had never done that. The second time I saw him, it was through a reflection. A shallow creek cut across the trail ahead. I stepped over it, then crouched to splash water on my face. When I looked down, he was behind me. Clear in the water. Standing in the trees. Same hat. Same posture. Same lack of movement. I whipped around. Nothing. But the reflection remained for one more second. Long enough for me to see his head turn slightly to the left. Like he was angling for a better view of me. That's when I realized something chilling. I had never seen him blink. Not in the reflection. Not in the corner of my eye. Not once. The sun began to set faster than it should have. The trail bent into denser trees. The underbrush grew thin, like the forest was opening its chest to swallow me whole. And then, just ahead on the trail, a ranger hat. Alone. Perfectly centered in the path. Propped upright like it had been placed on a mannequin's head, and the mannequin was gone. I didn't touch it. I walked wide around it and didn't look back. But from that point on, every time I blinked, I could feel him shift in closer. Not see. Not hear. Feel. A presence getting bolder every time I dared to look away. I passed a trail marker carved into a pine that read simply, "Always in sight." But the word "iron" had been scratched over. And beneath it, someone had written, "Always out of sight." I picked up my pace. Just as I crested the next ridge, a thick pine root snagged my ankle, and I fell hard onto the dirt. I gasped, rolled to my back, blinked twice. And in that split second, he was above me. Not hovering. Not leaning. Just standing at the ridge's edge. His silhouette framed by the sky. And even then, only in the corner of my eye. He never entered the center. Never let himself be fully seen. But his shape was changing. His shoulders weren't square anymore. His arms hung longer. And I realized, he didn't blink because he didn't have to. He wasn't using eyes to watch me. He was using me to watch through. I thought I was alone. That was the last illusion this trail let me keep. After the ridge, the terrain dipped into a lowland flat with a still lake at its center. It wasn't on any map, at least, not the one I was carrying, and I hadn't seen so much as a puddle all day. But there it was. Glassy, wide, silent. Not a single ripple on the surface. No wind. No bugs. Just me. And the reflection. I didn't notice it at first. I knelt at the edge, pulled off my pack, and leaned forward to fill my canteen. The surface was mirror-perfect. So much so that I could see every pine needle floating behind me. And one thing that shouldn't have been there. A second figure. Standing just behind me. Phil. Hat low. Arms behind his back. The ranger. I whipped around, heart thudding. No one. Nothing. But when I looked back at the water, he was still there. Still reflected. But now he wasn't behind me. He was standing beside me in the reflection. Same posture. Same position. Then I shifted, just slightly, to reach for my bag, and he shifted with me. Not delayed. Not mirrored. Synced. I stood up. He stood up. I crouched again. He crouched. I froze. And watched as his chest rose and fell, not with breath, but with imitation. A pulse of movement mimicking mine. "Okay," I whispered. "You want to be me." The moment the words left my mouth, his head turned in the reflection. Directly toward me. But I hadn't moved. I was still facing the lake. Still breathing shallow and slow. Still staring down at a reflection that was no longer mine. He raised a hand. So did I. But mine was trembling. His was steady. I stepped back. The reflection stayed. Didn't follow. Didn't fade. He just remained standing at the water's edge, perfectly posed like a wax figure, staring through the liquid glass. I walked backward slowly until the lake disappeared behind the trees. I didn't stop until the terrain changed. Rock. Ledges. Thicker growth. Roots that stuck out like buried fingers. I climbed a low slope until I found a clearing with a view. Far across the tree line, on the opposite ridge, I spotted movement. A shape. Small from this distance, but clear enough. The ranger. Standing on the exact same outcrop I was standing on. Facing me. Same stance. Same angle. I lifted my hand again. He did too. A second later. Just a fraction late. That's when I realized. He wasn't copying me anymore. I was copying him. He moved first. I moved second. And I hadn't noticed the shift. Somewhere along the trail, my body had started listening to him. I slammed my eyes shut and dropped to my knees. I didn't move for a long time. Didn't breathe deeply. Didn't think too loud. Because if he could control my body, maybe he could hear my thoughts. That's when I felt it. Not on my skin. Not in my head. But in my posture. Something in my arms tried to fold behind my back. I yanked them forward. Stared at them like they were strangers. Then I heard a rustle. I turned. And on the trail behind me stood a second version of me. Same jacket. Same hair. Same stance. But the posture was perfect. Like I'd been sculpted by something that never had a body of its own. It didn't speak. Didn't smile. Just raised a hand. I ran before I could see what it would do next. And behind me, I swear I heard it breathe. For the first time. I don't remember building the fire. That's how it started. One moment I was running through the woods, slipping on moss-slick stone and feeling the thing in my spine trying to stand me up straighter. The next, I was seated on a low log beside a perfect ring of stones, flame already flickering. My hands were warm. There were ashes on my sleeves. The fire was roaring, but I didn't remember gathering wood. Didn't remember striking a match. Just sat there, watching it like it had always been there, like it had been waiting for me. A second log sat across from mine. Empty. I knew who it was for. And sure enough, the woods behind me grew quiet again. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I felt him approach, not through footsteps, but in the way the fire dimmed slightly, as if it recognized a more ancient heat. He stepped out of the trees and into view. Same ranger uniform. Same hat. But now he had my face. Perfectly rendered. Not like a mask, like a suit. Worn too well. My jaw, my cheekbones, even the tiny scar near my eyebrow from a rock when I was 10. He sat across from me. And for the first time, he spoke. Not with his own voice. With mine. "You've been so good at watching." I couldn't move. Couldn't even look away. He cocked his head, smile wide and wrong. My smile, but overextended, pulled a little too tight. "You gave it shape," he said. "What did I?" I whispered. My throat felt dry. Like I hadn't used it in days. The copy leaned closer, and for a moment I saw his teeth. Too many. The body. The path. The face. "You let me walk where eyes had been." He raised his hand. My hand. Held it over the fire. and then, without a sound, stepped directly into the flames. Not around them, into them, and stood. The fire didn't react. It didn't crack or spark or recoil. It welcomed him. Flames wrapped around his legs, licked up his chest, rolled over his face, my face, and didn't burn. Just shimmered. Like they were lighting a signpost for something else. And then he looked at me. Not through the flames, but from them. His smile widened again. My lips parted. And my own voice came out of the fire. "You're ready." That was when my body stood on its own. Without asking. Without effort. Just rose. And my arms? Folded behind my back. Exactly like his had. I tried to fight it. Tried to scream, move, cry, anything, but my body had gone quiet inside. Still mine, but only because he'd given it back temporarily. Not to free me. To use me. To finish copying. He stepped out of the fire slowly. Not a mark on him. Still smiling. Still wearing me. He walked past without a word, disappearing into the trees. But before his shape faded, he paused and turned his head slightly. My nod. Then gone. And I was left standing at the fire. Alone again. Except now? When I closed my eyes, I didn't see the flames. I saw through his trees. A trail. And a new figure walking alone. Just ahead of me. My next copy.